Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville, your host. Tonight is September 12th, 2016, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different subjects tonight. Of course, we need to talk specifically about the Kratom issue because we are still in the fight. We have some good news in regards to the Kratom issue, and we also want to help direct the strategy and action in this movement. We also want to talk about some other drug war related issues and ideas. We talk about some domestic policy, some strategy points, and then move over. We want to talk about what happened here in South Carolina with the bees, the nailed or nailed spraying, depending on how you want to pronounce that. We'll talk about that. We'll also touch on the Syrian crisis and the ceasefire agreement. And, of course, the show is being recorded on September 11th, 2016, the 15th anniversary of 9/11, and we are going to be discussing that, if we can, in the time that we have on the show. I want to mention some things about 9/11 and address that topic. Now, before I do, I want to remind everybody that you can catch Truth on the Tracks here Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's rebroadcast throughout the week on UCY.TV. If you want to access the show's personal webpage, ucy.tv/TT for Truth on the Tracks. You'll find the archives of the show, the links to my articles, all of that on that webpage. If you're interested in following my work, of course, activistpost.com, eraofwisdom.org, naturalblaze.com, and if you're interested in my work specifically, I encourage you to go to BrandonTurbeville.com, and that is the website where I repost all of my articles, all of the YouTube videos, all of the archives of this show. The relevant information is there. A free copy of The Difference It Makes, 36 Reasons Hillary Clinton Should Never Be President, is available there for download for free and sharing. All the articles are there. The books are there for purchase as well. And we've got stuff going up there all the time. We're going to add a few more features to the website soon. And I mentioned last week, one of the things that we were going to add is the action alert and the strategy point postings. So what this is the action alert postings are posts that will alert the readers and listeners to acute issues, right? We did this with the Kratom issue. So the action alert is to let you know that there is a problem, sort of an emergency problem, and it's going to let you know what that problem is and what to do about it. And we did this for the Kratom issue. We've got 2 action alert posts up about that, and we'll get into it in a second. But the strategy points posting are going to be things like referendums that are coming up, elections to look at, protests that are coming up where there might be some intervention. And of course, there, for instance, there's a marijuana convention, or not a convention, but in Greenville, there's a meeting of individuals who are going to be speaking about marijuana. I'm having a Gary Johnson moment here, and I can't remember the name of the type of event. Conference. It's a conference. It's a marijuana conference, and I guess we're having a what is Aleppo moment. But these are the strategy points that we're going to be putting out. And, of course, one of the things that we are encouraging people to do is to take a copy of A Real New Deal for America, 43 Points, which is available on my website. You can post it, print it out from my website. You can find it on the website. You know, it's always up there at the right-hand side of the web page. You just click on it and it'll come up. This is an overview of our platform. So we want to get this platform out to different organizations and individuals. You can send it in an email form to as many people as you can. You can send it to the organizations if you'd like. And as we go along, we're going to be writing different articles that justify each one of the points. And you can use that as well. For instance, we have the case for the 1% Wall Street sales tax, nationalize the Federal Reserve, and a couple of others that you can print out and hand out as flyers at some of these protests, some of these conferences, and some of these other types of meetings, because we want to be interventionists, right? We don't want to sit around and watch other people go out and fight against the drug war or fight against Wall Street with no direction. We want to give them demands. So if you see an anti-Wall Street protest, then hand them the 43 points article, or go give them the case for the 1% Wall Street sales tax, nationalize the Federal Reserve, and let them see what they should be demanding. If it is a pro-marijuana protest, then hand them a copy of the 43 points, and then hand them a copy of It's Time to Abolish the DEA, which is another article that we've done to give them an idea of what we want here. This is the demands that we should be making, not just we don't want the current system. This is the system that we want, right? Wall Street taxed 1%, a nationalized Federal Reserve, where we can use the credit-creating power of that bank, that national bank, to do what we need to do here in the country to rebuild infrastructure and pay for other things and jumpstart us into the 21st century, because we're not there yet. If it's an anti-drug war organization or protest, then we go out and we give them a demand, which is abolish the DEA. In the drug war period, we don't want any more of the drug war, and legalize marijuana, legalize LSD, obviously legalize kratom, legalize mushrooms. Yeah, legalize all of it, because adults in a free society have the right to make these decisions. So we have to be specific on our demand. So again, I'm going to put this out in a strategy point article, and that's essentially the marching orders for the listeners, the readers, and of course the individuals who contacted me a while back. Now, let's look at the first action alert that we need to address, because this deals with kratom. The DEA obviously made kratom and made an emergency decision to schedule kratom on Schedule 1 list of controlled substances here. And you can read my articles on that, listen to past shows, and we can talk about it. So here are the things that we want you to do. This is what you need to do in order to stop this travesty. Before we do that, though, I want to mention a couple of other things. I want to get this information out there, and then we'll talk about the action. I've got a couple of stories on my website that are sent to me by kratom users with their personal stories, and one of them is called My Kratom Story by Adrian Smith Madden. It tells about that person's story. It's posted on BrandonTurbeville.com, and of course the other story is Kratom Helped Me Turn My Life Around. Now the DEA Has Banned It by Morgan Joylighter, and that's on BrandonTurbeville.com as well. So please go check those stories out. Now, we also have what I want to mention here about the MGM-15 in relation to kratom and the decision to ban it by the DEA. Now, we know there's a lot of reasons the DEA wants kratom off of the market, meaning they want it off the market so that Americans can continue to be addicted to opiates, OxyContin, oxycodone, to be dependent on Big Pharma, or to go back to their habits of heroin and cocaine, which of course fund the CIA's black operations, and by their very nature fund the private prison industrial complex, where we can send Americans and into cages like animals for the possession of plants. But it makes a lot of money for a lot of other people, and there's all these side economies that pop up as a result of it. But there's something else, right? The fact that we have a lot of researchers trying to develop synthetic opiates, the patentable, profitable drugs that would replace things like kratom. We have 3 synthetic opiates in particular. They're synthesized from the alkaloids in kratom from 2008 to 2016. They were created. They're called MGM-9, MGM-15, and MGM-16. They were synthesized from kratom's alkaloids mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, which makes essentially makes it patentable pharmaceutical kratom. Now, I won't go into the detailed science about this, but we have a study that was published in 2008 which discusses it. that's on the National Institute of Health website, MGM9-E-methyl-2,3-ethyl-7A-12. We won't go through all of this. I mean, it's a ridiculously long title, but it's there, and it's in the article by Cassius Camarampi, and he's from Era of Wisdom, but it's also on BrandonTurbeville.com. There was another study published in 2014 about synthesized MGM-15 and MGM-16 from Kratom's other primary alkaloid, which is 7-hydroxymitragynine. There are dozens of studies about this in the past few years. There are several of them quoted in the article, but regardless of whether or not the kratom ban and the pharmaceutical interest are directly connected to this, the synthesis of new opioid compounds and then the continued efforts by pharmaceutical interests to patent new opiates should illustrate how kratom's legality is a potential obstacle in their way, right? People should definitely take a look into this, and I think more work is being done to determine whether or not there are patents that are actually being held for this synthetic kratom, and then we might have a direct connection to people who might benefit from seeing this kratom plant banned. And the article is Pharmaceutical Kratom, Real Reason for Kratom Ban, New Opiate MGM-15 Derived from Mitragynine. So check that out on Era of Wisdom and BrandonTurbeville.com. Now, we also have an article that was co-written by myself and Cassius Camarampi. DEA plays dumb after eviscerating criticism of kratom ban. Kratom March is September 13th. So that article is up there as well, and you can check that out. This got part of an action alert, but we'll discuss all that. Now, let's talk about the action. Let's talk about what you can do, and I want you to get a pen and paper at hand, because this is what I am calling you to do. We need all hands on deck. You're not going to really have to put yourself out there too much for this one either, but you can do a lot of good just sitting here at your computer for this one. Now, what you need to do, number one, support the American Kratom Association in their upcoming legal battle for civil liberties and health freedom. Okay, so the American Kratom Association, this is www.americankratom.org, and kratom is spelled Kratom. This is an organization that has been highly successful in preventing the ridiculous statewide bans of kratom that took place all across the country. They only failed once, I believe. And this is the sort of leading tip of the spear in the fight for kratom rights, the American Kratom Association. They are actually going to be contacting and working with a lobbying firm. They're going to be working with a lawyer who's going to challenge this DEA ban in court. So the fight is on, but they need money to do it, because lobbyists and lawyers don't work for free. So if you can donate anything, go to americankratom.org and look at their kratom. Look at their donation sites. All right, their ability, your options to donate there, and please donate whatever you can, even if it's just $1. If you can spare $1, just please send them $1. Basically what you'll need, if you go to americankratom.org/donate, if the site happens to be down because of high traffic, if you go to PayPal, their email address is akratomassociation@gmail.com. Again, to donate, go to americankratom.org/donate, and you can donate there. If you also want to use PayPal, or if the site is down, just send them money at the email address of akratomassociation@gmail.com. And I also encourage you to find the American Kratom Association on Facebook. So like that page and follow what they've got there. Sign up at their website for their newsletter that will keep you abreast of all developments. Now, to follow along with me here as I'm going through these points, there is the action alert from September 4th, 2016. It says, help stop the DEA's attack on kratom. So please, if you are able to go to my website and just pull that up. You can search. There's a search bar at the top left-hand corner of the home page. Just put in Action Alert 9-4-16 or Help Stop the DEA's Attack on Kratom. There's two. We get the September 4th one that is the most comprehensive. And read along here with me and check these things off your list. Now, number 2, there is a petition that we want you to sign. It's the whitehouse.gov petition. Please do not make kratom a Schedule I substance. Now, we are aware about the effect of petitions and that they don't really, they're not the be-all, end-all by any means. This is literally the least you can do, but it's something you can do, and it only takes just a second. The link to the petition is right there in my article, The Action Alert, under Sign This Petition is number 2. We wanted to have, by September 29th, 100,000 signatures. We have already reached that goal. It is now, if you're listening to this, September 12th, we have 115,718. We want more. We can do better. We can do 200,000. Let's make it 200,000 signatures. So get on there and just sign the petition. Sign it only once, by the way. Only sign it once. Don't try to be sneaky. Number 3, we want you to join the march on the White House on Tuesday, September 13th, if you're able. The American Kratom Association is co-sponsoring a peaceful protest march at the White House. Attend the event, and if you can. Now, there's a website for the march. It is kratommarchdc.com. So kratommarchdc.com. And there's also a Facebook event for Kratom March DC. So go join the Facebook event. Even if you can't go join the Facebook event. Share that event around, promote it, and if you're able to go, then go to the Kratom March at the White House. Again, kratommarchdc.com. So please go there. And again, this is an opportunity to hand out at the march a copy of the article, It's Time to Abolish the DEA. That's a good intervention, right? And you can also hand out the 43 points if you want, but make your judgment. This is about kratom and kratom only. Now, number 4, contact the relevant authorities and make your voice heard. Now, we have in the article links to the contact forms and so forth. So we want you to contact your congressperson, and we have a link. It's house.gov/representatives/find/. You should have found my action alert by now, and you should be able to click on the links. But find your representative. If you don't know who they are, a simple Google search will help. And we also want you to contact your senator. And you can go senate.gov/senators/contact/. You can find your senators and send them a sample letter. And we have a sample letter template at the bottom of the action alert. But this is, in general, what we want you to say. Now, we don't want you to copy and paste this letter. We want you to do your own work, but this is the idea of what we want you to say. We need let me skip over part of this here, but this is Dear Congressman blank or Senator blank, etc. Address your senator, your congressman. And you can also do this to a committee member, House Judiciary Committee, honorary committee member, whoever you're contacting. This is the gist of what we want you to say. Hello, or Dear Congressman, or Dear Senator, Dear Committee Member, blank, whoever you're addressing. Give your name, give your age, give your gender, and where you're from. So my name is John. I'm a 28-year-old male from Florida, right? And then say that you are their constituent. And say something to the effect of, I'd like to voice my opposition to the DEA's intent to schedule the alkaloids mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, which would make kratom mitragina speciosa a Schedule I controlled substance with no medicinal value. This would put kratom, a plant helping millions of people suffering chronic and acute mental and physical conditions, that is also safely easing the nation's opiate epidemic problem naturally, on the same level as illegal drugs like heroin. It would also prevent further research which to date has shown kratom to be an effective painkiller that does not cause respiratory depression, the main cause of death from opiate overdose. Then tell them how you came to use kratom. Tell your story, basically, right? What ailments you suffer from, what treatments didn't work, whether it's prescriptions or surgery, and how long you've been dealing with your condition, how long you've been using kratom, and how many and what medications you've been able to quit as a result of it. Tell them what kratom means to you. Has it given you your life back? Have you gone back to work? Can you play with your kids? Can you exercise? Can you travel? Give something anecdotal about why kratom is important and why it should be available. And your conclusion, to basically tell them that kratom is a safe alternative to pharmaceutical drugs with important medicinal uses and that it's changed your life. Tell them you're asking them to contact the DEA. Tell them you want them to send a letter or request an oversight hearing asking to delay this emergency action. Say, if you fear this action by the DEA will only lead to more tragic deaths of victims of the opiate epidemic, possibly even yours. Say that your own quality of life as a productive member of society will not be the same without kratom. And if they have any questions about kratom, that they can go to AmericanKratom.org. And then thank them for reading your letter, taking the time to think about it. Include your name, address, and phone number. Be professional, be polite, and do keep it as short as possible. Now, if you're not a kratom user and you're just a supporter of kratom being legal and an opponent of the drug war, and you don't have your own personal story about how kratom helped you, then that's fine. Tell them that. Tell them that you're not a kratom user, but that you simply don't support the DEA's unilateral decision to declare something illegal that has benefited so many people, and that free adults should have the right to choose whether or not they consume a plant or not. So do that. Send that letter, and do that ASAP. Do it now. Now, just your senator and your congressperson are not the only people we want you to contact. We want you to contact the Assistant Secretary of Health, Karen B. DeSalvo. All of these letters must be documented by all federal agencies for proof. Phone calls are effective, but they aren't documented in the same way. So we want you to send any information you have from doctors, nurses, researchers, or papers from PubMed or something like that to Karen B. DeSalvo. And that email is ash@hhs.gov. That email is in the action alert. We want you to call the DEA, 202-307-1000. Again, that's 202-307-1000. Ask for Melvin Patterson. And then you can press number 4 to share your story. Do that. Now, we have a list of all the committees that have jurisdiction over the DEA. That's the House and Senate Judiciary Committee being the most important. We want you to message every one of their members. Now, I've got links to the committees, the House Judiciary, the Senate Judiciary, the House Energy and Commerce, House Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee, Senate Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee, House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, and U.S. Department of Justice. Now, here's what I want you to do. Go to that action alert and go to each one of those committees. Find the members and contact each one of the members with a letter similar to what you sent your congressperson and your senator. Each one of those committees, each one of the members of the committees. And then for every avenue of potential contact, I want you to take advantage of that. So with the U.S. Department of Justice, you've got a contact form online, so send a letter on the contact form. You've got a physical address, so send a printed out letter to the physical address. You've got a contact line, a phone number, so call the contact line, the comment line. You've got a main switchboard, so call the switchboard. Do all of that. Every avenue that you've got here, you should do it. Now, we also have, of course, not only the Department of Justice, we have the Assistant Attorney General, you have the Office of Diversion Control, Drug Enforcement Administration, Assistant Secretary of HHS, Acting Secretary for Secretary of Health, the Assistant Secretary for Legislation, Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs, and the Acting Assistant Secretary for Administration. We have additional contact options. This is once you've done all of that, we want you to look at the additional contact options and then do the same for all these additional contact options. Again, it's imperative that you get the action alert from September 4th, 2016 on my website, BrandonTurbeville.com. Search it or scroll back to September 4th, 2016, and all the links are there. It's going to be impossible for me to give you this information if you're not on the action alert, because it's just too much, and we'd spend the whole show going over phone numbers and emails. So, again, be sure to contact all those people. Now, number 5, what we also want you to do, there is a fact sheet about Kratom from the American Kratom Association. There is a link to that in my article, in the action alert. So do send that to journalists, mainstream, alternative, doesn't matter, but especially mainstream. Send this to journalists, send this to legislators. You can even take this document, you want to print it out, or you want to attach it as a file, or put it in the email somehow where it could be seen, and send it to all of them. Send it to law enforcement. Send it to, of course, friends and family, and share it on social media. So we want to educate everybody, including the ones higher up, so they can understand where Kratom stands as a medicinal herb. But make sure you get that fact sheet. The link is there. There is, of course, the I Am Kratom photo campaign, the hashtag I Am Kratom photo campaign. Join that somehow. Get on Twitter, hashtag I Am Kratom. If you want to tell your story, you want to send a photo, you want to make some memes or something, hashtag I Am Kratom. Let's make that go viral. Now, also, you can go to Facebook and join the group Keep Kratom Legal. So join that group so you can stay up to date on all the news. If you're a writer, this is the number 7, all right? If you're a writer, please write relevant content regarding Kratom, Kratom freedom. Post this material to your website. If you don't have a website, then send it to me, anticodex@yahoo.com. Anticodex@yahoo.com. It's ANTICODEX@yahoo.com. And in the meantime, we want you to write, this is even more imperative, we want you to write to local newspapers and contact your local news media, particularly if you're somebody who's used Kratom and now it's going to be made illegal and you're not going to have access to it. You have a story to tell. Look at your local newspaper and see if they accept letters to the editor. They most likely do. Look at the requirements they have for a letter to the editor. Send them a short letter in. It only takes a minute to write something like that and send it in. It does not have to be perfect. And the local news media, you'll find a lot of the local news, maybe not the national media, of course, but the local news media. Many times you'll notice that if you're in a small town, you're getting news from, Seattle, and you're in Florida, because the reason is they have nothing else to run. The part of it is they just don't have anything to go. If you're in a small town, nothing happens. Well, make something happen. You're the story here. This is your chance. Contact your local news media organizations, your TV organizations, even your newspaper, and tell them, I am a Kratom user. Kratom changed my life, and now the damn DEA has banned it. And let me go on TV, let me do an interview with you and tell you why this is a terrible decision and the impact it's going to have on our lives. So please do that. You can tell them, you can even give them the angle, because you'll find that a lot of times mainstream journalists are not as skilled as what you would think, despite the fact that they went through 4 years of college, and probably because of the fact that they went through 4 years of college, they're generally not as good at coming up with headlines as people who figured it out. So give them the angle, which is that the DEA is attempting to ban a substance that reduces drug use and is incredibly safe, and you're a walking testament to that. Number 8, we've discussed this over and over. We want you to act as a liaison between pro-Kratom organizations, anti-drug war organizations, pro-legalization organizations, as well as groups that simply support individual choice in order to create a united front against this latest move by the DEA. So we want you to act as the uniting factor between pro-Kratom organizations. There aren't as many different ones there as there are for marijuana and other issues, but there are a few different ones, and we want to unite them under the common cause of making Kratom legal. And this is what we want you to do. Act as the liaison, act as the middleman to bring these groups together. And we want you, of course, to send your action slugs, which are reports on progress and activity, again, to anticodex@yahoo.com. Let us know what you're doing. Again, the Kratom March in Washington, D.C. is going to be on Tuesday, September 13th. But I've just been informed by listeners and readers, or at least one listener and reader, who is working on getting a Kratom March going in other places, and we're going to let you know about the date on that. So this is the effect that we're having now. We've managed to push this into the mainstream. The Huffington Post is covering the issue. Forbes is covering the issue. We've got a number of other mainstream websites and television stations and so forth covering this issue. So we push this into the mainstream. And that's all good news. We need to keep pushing. We need to keep pushing in this regard. Now, we've spent quite enough time on this right now, but we again encourage you to take action. I also want to draw your attention to an article that's up at BrandonTurbeville.com, naturalblaze.com, Organizations Unite and Connect with Each Other by Lanaria Amberkira. This article is basically saying what we have been arguing for some time in regards of to trying to unite organizations that are working toward the same goal, but who aren't working with one another. And this is incredibly stupid if you're an organization that's working for the same goal as another one, but you simply won't work together with the other organization. This is bad strategy. And we encourage all the organizations to put their egos aside, their petty squabbles aside, and work together. And this is exactly what Lanaria is trying to say in this article. And that's why I reposted it on my site. And we are seeing some signs that people are trying to do that. So go take a look at that as well. So just a word more on the ridiculous drug war. We did a story recently. A new study that has come out of the UK is now using science to confirm what most of us have already known and humans have known for centuries, is that psilocybin, which is the hallucinogenic chemical found in magic mushrooms, is able to lift and treat severe depression in humans. I have 12 people given high doses of psilocybin at Imperial College London. All volunteers were severely depressed before undergoing the experiment and were considered untreatable. A week after the experiment, all of the volunteers were depression-free. 3 months later, 5 of them still had no symptoms. And the results of the study were actually published in the Lancet Psychiatry Journal. And the the study welcomed the results, but it strangely labeled the results as, quote, promising but not completely compelling, end quote. The researchers said they're trying to find more funding for the Medical Research Council and other sources to conduct more effective experiments. There's a problem with the control substance, with the control group, because it's such, it's such an obvious, it's obvious whether or not you've actually taken the mushrooms, so it's hard to get a control group. But scientific research has shown that psilocybin can relieve depression by targeting certain receptors in the brain and disrupting the default mode network. The DMN is responsible for a person's sense of self, and in depressed people, the DMN is overactive. But these scientists aren't merely suggesting that the psychedelic experience was related only to a chemical reaction. They actually said that it's possible that the trip produced a spiritual awakening in the subjects, and that the awakening was responsible for the disappearance of the depression. We have lead author Dr. Robin Carhart Harris saying, quote, psychedelic drugs have potent psychological effects and are only given in our research when appropriate safeguards are in place, such as careful screening and professional therapeutic support. I wouldn't want members of the public thinking they can treat their own depressions by picking their own magic mushrooms. That kind of approach could be risky, end quote. Well, they're obviously trying to be careful with their words because they are trying to be responsible researchers, but the truth is the biggest danger from picking your own magic mushrooms is getting the wrong mushroom, not anything else. For centuries, humans have used psilocybin mushrooms for spiritual enlightenment, and with great success, I might add. Mushrooms are relatively safe. The fact that they're listed in both the United States and the UK as a Schedule I drug is an indictment of the politicized science and corporate control of government and an assault against individual freedoms. Look at the Kratom now, Schedule I. It's ridiculous. So even scientifically controlled research requires enormous amounts of money with psilocybin because of the hoops that they have to jump through just to simply explore the possibilities of the benefits of these substances. The recent study of psilocybin and depression cost £1,500 per person and 32 months of waiting before the experiment could take place. It should have costed virtually nothing because these things are they grow naturally. I don't know what, maybe 30 pounds at the most for all these people. Professor David Nutt was involved in this research, and he was actually fired from his position as the government's drug advisor in 2009 for being outspoken that psilocybin should be removed from Schedule I of the Misuse of Drugs Act. So we agree with Professor Nutt that psilocybin should be removed from Schedule I, and that more research into the benefits of psilocybin should be conducted, and that it has value in terms of treatment for depression. But we also argue for the sane world that Professor Nutt mentions in his own statement, if you read it. And what we argue for is that nonviolent people who possess, sell, or distribute psilocybin mushrooms should not be thrown into cages and have their lives ruined as a result of ridiculous and bullheaded police state drug war policy. But if you want to read more about that, go read the article Magic Mushrooms Treat Severe Depression in Scientific Trial. Now, we have some good news. We have late August, Monsanto withdrew its application seeking approval for the new version of genetically modified cotton seeds in India. There's been a dispute between Monsanto and New Delhi for quite some time surrounding the prices Monsanto charges for the GMO cotton seeds and the corporation's resistance to sharing technology with local Indian seed companies. The Monsanto spokesman said that the withdrawal of the application was an outcome of the uncertainty in the business and regulatory environment. He provided reassurance that the decision had no impact on current cotton portfolio being sold in India. On the 5th of July, Maharashtra's Hybrid Seeds Company, Ltd., that's Mako, it's Monsanto's technology partner in India, highlighted a government proposal that would have required Monsanto to share biotechnology products with local Indian seed companies. And the letter said that the government proposal alarmed Monsanto and raised serious concerns about the protection of intellectual property rights, of course. After complaints by Monsanto and other multinational seed companies, the Indian government temporarily withdrew its order so that it could have time to hear feedback from stakeholders. MACO has now asked the GEAC, the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee, the Indian seed regulator, to return the data and other materials submitted by Monsanto as part of the application of Bollgard 2 Roundup Ready Flex. Now that Bollgard 2 Roundup Ready Flex is the next installment of biotechnology which builds on Bollgard 2, which was introduced in 2006, but it's becoming more and more vulnerable to bollworms. So Monsanto was clearly attempting to put a gun to the head of the Indian government and hold Indian farmers hostage. The ransom they're demanding is proprietary monopoly and high prices for its seeds instead of just cash. So because GMO biotechnology is a constant upgrade of technology designed to fight the upgraded ecological and agricultural disasters that have resulted from the use of biotechnology in the first place, Monsanto now has India over a barrel. Now the Indian farmers are facing pesticide-resistant insects, and those specifically resistant to the hyped-up pesticides sold by Monsanto, and that's created by Monsanto. The withdrawal of any new technology could put Indian farmers at risk of pestilence and eventual collapse of their cotton industry. Outside of the United States, India is one of Monsanto's largest clients, and the corporation clearly believes that the Indian government will just knuckle under soon enough. But India should view the attempted strong arm by Monsanto as a blessing in disguise. Now the country is being given the impetus for a move away from the corporate-dominated agriculture and the control that big business has over the food supply of 1 billion people. So we are encouraging India to begin looking for ways for them to reclaim their agriculture and food supply and slowly push out big ag corporations like Monsanto. Regardless of the consequences of resisting Monsanto in the short term, they will far outweigh the consequences of knuckling under in the long term. As one of the world's most populated countries and one of Monsanto's largest customers, India must respond by informing Monsanto that the corporation is in no position to bargain. The Indian government must immediately prepare a program to rescue small farmers and deal accordingly with larger ones. India must begin to move forward on the transition from a GM-dependent form of agriculture to traditional production, complete with a ban on open-air GM cultivation for non-scientific purposes. The Indian government must begin to use all of its resources to initiate a transitioning process from Monsanto's GM cotton to traditional methods of production. If Monsanto resists, then they should be reminded that it's the prerogative of national governments to seize foreign entities when national security is at stake. Certainly, the Indian food supply and one of its top agricultural exports would fall under the national security category. So it's time for India to reassert its national sovereignty and provide its people and the rest of the world with what they both truly desire: clean food, agricultural products that are not beholden to vulturistic corporations. So that's what we have to say about that. Now, we run out of time. We're running out of time. We recently had the bee holocaust, right? Millions of bees were killed here in South Carolina because of the panic and pant-wetting hysteria over the Zika virus. They sprayed something called NAILED or nailed here in South Carolina, killed millions of bees. Now they're preparing to do it again. 1 million dead bees apparently are not enough, because right on the heels of the annihilation of the millions of bees in Dorchester County as a result of this hysteria, Charleston County Mosquito Control is conducting aerial spraying from September 7th to September 12th on standing water. We have the county's Facebook page. The spraying will take place from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. They posted a notice of their intentions to spray. County officials point out that they've been aerially spraying for years, that they'll be notifying the public via email 24 hours in advance, and that it was going to work with local beekeepers to notify them of any spraying coming up. Mosquito control representatives have said that they're going to be working on public education and have given presentations to beekeeper groups in the area. They're stressing the importance of the beekeepers providing their information to mosquito control so it can be added to the records. I I imagine a lot of them would probably be worried about that. Mosquito control uses trumpet for most of its aerial adulticiding. Trumpet contains the active ingredient of nailed, but it's considered different because the product is water-based and not an oil. Anybody who knows about this nailed, right, or nailed, we have the pesticide management education program out of Cornell says that it's moderately to highly toxic by ingestion, inhalation, and dermal absorption. Vapors of fumes of nailed are corrosive to the mucous membranes lining the mouth, throat, and lungs, and inhalation may cause severe irritation. A sensation of tightness in the chest and coughing are commonly experienced after inhalation. As with all organophosphates, nailed is readily absorbed through the skin. Skin which has come into contact with this material should be washed immediately with soap and water, and all contaminated clothing should be removed. Persons with respiratory ailments, recent exposure to cholinesterase inhibitors, impaired cholinesterase production, or with liver malfunction may be at increased risk from exposure to nailed. High environmental temperatures or exposure of nailed to visible or UV light may enhance its toxicity. So that same profile warned that nailed is highly toxic to bees. They say Phyphanon will be used when spraying in the McClellanville, Alwyndaw area. So they're saying McClellanville and Alwyndaw is going to have a different type of pesticide, but maybe we should look into Phyphanon. So the county officials are saying that the spray is going to be used in this operation not the same as the spray used in Dorchester. They claim that the spray is not harmful to bees, but considering the fact that it contains the same major active ingredient of nailed, these claims are questionable at best. So obviously many Charleston County residents aren't happy with the idea of being sprayed like bugs, or in South Carolina's case as bees. But you can see on social media that they're really upset about all this stuff. But it does not stop the Charleston County panickers and bedwetters. All the hype surrounding the Zika virus, much of which is unfounded and panic-driven, the Charleston County residents are clearly dissatisfied with the decision to spray, and we call on the Charleston County mosquito control to stop it, to stop spraying. We can only imagine how the bees must feel watching South Carolina officials now prepare for the bee equivalent of the Dresden bombing, which is about to take place, or is actually taking place now as we speak. Now, we need to take a look at what's happening in Syria, just briefly, because then I want to make a comment on the 9/11 issue. We now have a ceasefire agreement signed on to by the United States and Russia, and being essentially imposed upon the Syrian government. This ceasefire is going to make it impossible for the Syrian government to attack the so-called moderate rebels. And we also see that the ceasefire is allegedly supposed to be going to require the rebels to act like something other than savages and jihadists. But basically what we have is we got two prongs here that I want to talk about. Basically, we've got the establishment of a buffer zone. We have the Syrian government is now agreeing to this because, again, it's being imposed upon them because of the Russian cooperation here. John Kerry is saying that the ceasefire agreement would prevent the Syrian president's forces, the Syrian military, from flying combat missions anywhere the opposition is present. He said this is the bedrock of the agreement. So the Syrian military is now unable to fly combat missions against foreign fighters funded by foreign countries to overthrow its government. If it can't fly combat missions where the opposition is present, we essentially have a no-fly zone. And this is what the West has been arguing for to begin with. Now, we also see that the United States is supposed to do more in regards to separating the moderate rebels, the moderate cannibals, from the extremist cannibals. The idea is that the Syrian government will stop fighting against what's called U.S.-backed rebels. Of course, this is just name changes, obviously. And in exchange, the U.S. would launch joint military operations with Russia against Jabhat al-Nusra, or Jabhat Fatah al-Sham. That's Al-Qaeda, essentially, but it's also the rebels. And they will do that if the ceasefire is observed for a minimum of 7 days. And of course, there have already been some airstrikes, so we don't even know if this is going to last 7 days. The idea here is that, of course, ISIS is exempted from this deal. ISIS is not considered part of it. We'll have to go into more detail at some point later and discuss how all this is going to play out. Declaring that the Syrian government cannot fly airstrikes against terrorists who are attempting to overthrow it is a de facto no-fly zone, and it's a terribly bad idea. As good as it might seem in the short term for civilians to say that we want peace, and certainly we want peace, it is worse in the long term to accept terrorists in Syria and to give them legitimacy, and to say that we're going to have some type of power sharing agreement, or that there's any legitimate faction to these animals in Syria. It is worse in the long term for civilians, because civilians will be the ones that have to live in a puppet state and a rump state. They have to live in a situation of constant warfare from here on into the foreseeable and unforeseeable future because of this so-called compromise, as opposed to knuckling under and retaking Aleppo. You see, every time there is the clinch of victory by the Syrian military, every time the Syrian military gets a major strategic victory, the West comes forward and says, we want peace talks. In other words, time out, we don't want to fight, let's talk about peace, so they can get their breath, rearm, re-strategize, and then resupply, and then break the ceasefire and retake land and so forth back from the Syrian military. But we're going to be covering this next week, because I want to say a few words about the 15th anniversary of 9/11 before the show is over. For many of us, 9/11 was the beginning of the change of our entire worlds. I can say quite clearly that my entire world was changed on September 11th, 2001. And the post-9/11 world is one in which we see nothing but constant world terrorism, constant warfare. The police are essentially a paramilitary wing. This is a hallmark of banana republics and dictatorships, by the way. But we have all of that here in the United States, and we didn't have as much of that before. We were heading in that direction, but 9/11 is really the spark that set the fire for all of this. And I realize that we've got so many people now who are trying to make a positive change in the world. Many of you are listeners to my show and readers of my articles, and you don't remember 9/11 because you're too young. And there's obviously nothing wrong with that. But what is concerning is that people who were 5 years old, younger, or even a little older, 8 years old when 9/11 happened, don't remember the world before 9/11. They don't remember a world before color-coded terror warnings or paramilitary police everywhere, roided-out police who saw the American people as an enemy. Well, maybe some communities do remember that, but it has gotten increasingly, exponentially worse since 9/11. And this is an important issue. I encourage you, if you haven't studied the issue of 9/11, please go look at Loose Change Final Cut. Go look at a documentary called Confronting the Evidence, and take a look at the evidence that they're going to put forward there. 9/11 was an inside job. I will say that clearly and with confidence. And if you want a basic, very basic primer, you can get my book, 7 Real Conspiracies. It puts it out in really simplistic terms. The idea that jet fuel melted steel beams when it is physically impossible for it to do so, that it brought down the World Trade Center towers in free fall speed, which is physically impossible because of resistance. Resistance would have prevented that. That it fell down symmetrically. Again, impossible. That we heard charges and saw squibs in the buildings. This shows that it was a controlled demolition. That Building 7, World Trade Center 7, fell. Later on in the evening, it was not hit by a plane. It also collapsed immediately into its own footprint at free fall speed. Larry Silverstein later said that we needed to pull it. The Pentagon, again, I really would. I will have you on as a guest on my show if you can present me with a picture of a plane at the Pentagon on 9/11. There is a small hole. The pictures that were shown on the mainstream reports, of course, showed the collapse of the wall, but before that, it was only a small hole, and it's just not physically possible for a plane to do what they are claiming the plane did. The plane in Shanksville, many questions about that, whether or not it was actually shot down. Seems to be plenty of reports that it was indeed shot down. There were other phantom planes. Al-Qaeda is being blamed, and we know who created Al-Qaeda. It was the United States government in cooperation, of course, with the Saudis and the Israelis. Keep in mind that people who worked for the Israeli telecommunications company were not at work on 9/11. They were told to stay home. So many connections there. I wish we could go through all of them, but we just don't have the time to do it. But I encourage you to go look at those documentaries. Pick up some books by David Ray Griffin, The New Pearl Harbor, the 9/11 Commission Report, Debunking 9/11 Debunking. Those are 3 good books by David Ray Griffin. Alice in Wonderland and the World Trade Center Disaster by David Icke. The book by Webster Tarpley, 9/11 Synthetic Terror by Webster Tarpley, is another excellent book that debunks the official story of 9/11. And I will leave you with this. If you ever, we might not be able, as people who question the 9/11 official story, to say exactly what happened on September 11th, but we can say what didn't happen. We might not be able to prove a theory about what we believed happened, but we can easily disprove the official story of 9/11. And I'll tell you how the official story of 9/11 is that 19 Arab Muslim hijackers flew planes into the World Trade Center, except that 7 of those 19 hijackers are still alive. That proves the official story is false right there. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Truth on the Tracks. I'm Brandon Turbeville. We'll see you next week.
This is Ozzy Skateboard, and you're listening to UCY.tv.